of audio and visual channels. Hello, everybody. I'm John Hindhaugh for Radio Show Limited, RS1 and the international video feed coming together on what at the moment is a beautiful day here at the 49th running of the ADAC Total 24 hours at the Nürburgring, including, of course, the Nordschleife. Qualifying to come today and tomorrow. All the sessions count for something, so you've joined us at the perfect time. Little bit of wispy cloud, the wind blowing in from the back of the paddock. There's been a few threatening clouds this morning, but as yet, no issues with the weather. And considering there was a severe weather warning for this part of Germany over the last few days to hit today, Thursday, I think at the moment we're doing all right. Limited numbers of crowd allowed in to the stadium sections here at the Nürburgring on the Grand Prix circuit, and a slightly reduced entry list, but still absolutely quality. You'll be pleased to know it's not just me talking for the next few hours. Let's bring in the voice of RSL's Nürburgring Langstrecke series coverage, Bruce Jones, a slightly reduced but nonetheless deep and talented entry list in all of the classes. Bruce, good morning.
Good morning, John. It's a phenomenal entry. We'll brush over the pandemic. Of course, that's knocked the numbers down a bit, but it hasn't reduced the quality one iota. And I think the helicopter flying over the circuit will bring us some amazing shots. They get better and better from year on year. We'll show the top runners absolutely at the peak of their craft. And qualifying, of course, some of the drivers have already competed in one or two NLS rounds. They've done the qualifying event a few weeks back, and the stage is set. But as you say, John, here at the Nürburgring, you never know what you're going to get. We always have to keep an eye on the weather, and we'll be doing that. And of course, that's why we've got someone from Scotland joining us with Peter Mackay. He's very good at the weather, I would think.
Well, that's harsh. That's very harsh. But in fairness, I did live in Edinburgh for quite a while, and there is a little bit of moisture in the air at the moment. That could massively throw the cat amongst the pigeons, Peter. Welcome to the broadcast.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and I will gladly live up to that stereotype, and I think that knowledge will be quite handy at the moment. But of course, with the Nürburgring spanning 25.3 kilometres in this configuration, it might well be raining here just above the pits and paddock, but out over the Kesselchen and Klostertal and all these places on the other end of the circuit, it might not be. I was speaking with Timo Bernard a couple of weeks ago, who of course has won this race 5 times, and he said sometimes you can literally be just pulling into pit lane and still in a 50-50 mindset of whether to ask for dry tyres or slick tyres, dry tyres or rain tyres, I should say. So this is where the guys with a lot of experience of the circuit, looking at guys like Frank Stippler, and people like that, and of course the teams with a lot of experience here, like Fricadelli and Phoenix, I think they're going to come to the fore in this session.
So those are the two voices that you'll hear in the early sessions on Thursday and Friday. It will be Peter Snowy Snowden and Joe Bradders Bradley. The wet practice board has gone out, so my boyish enthusiasm over the weather has come to naught, I'm afraid. So that effectively means that the guys in the pit lane, whichever tyre company they have affiliations to, and for the most part, the classes here are open tyre choice for the manufacturers, which is great. And we always have, Bruce, I'm sure, will already have been going through the entry list to find out whose tyres are on which cars and how many different tyre manufacturers we've got. It was double figures last year from memory, and it is one of the last bastions of tyre competition. So at least it means that the guys have got free choice on the tyres at the moment. So RS1 around the world for the audio as we go to green flag at exactly midday midday, with a little bit of light drizzle just beginning to fall as the opening stanza is about to be played at the 2021 Nürburgring 24 hours. So whilst the cars go out, you know how long the lap is around here, gives us an opportunity to hear from one of the drivers who will be involved this weekend. Earlier on, I caught up with Falken's Klaus Bachler and had a chat with him about this weekend's event. And first of all, asked him about the international side of this event and just how big a race this is now.
Yeah, it's happy to be here. It's a really big event for everybody. We are happy to race here again, and this year there will be also some spectators, which is a nice way, and it's a good sign for the future. And yeah, like you said, John, it's a big race. It's a lot of preparation. We had already a lot of meetings that we are well prepared in terms of strategy, in terms of rules, in terms of also definitely weather conditions. It could be that we have a mixed race, mixed weather conditions for this weekend, and that's already quite some big effect, because for this we need to change our plans in the qualifying.
You make a very good point there, Klaus. You and the team have plenty of experience here. The Falken Motorsports team running their 911 GT3R this weekend. But in some ways, I wonder how much you can actually plan for the Nürburgring 24 hours, because the Nordschleife likes to make fools out of all of us at times, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's difficult to predict anything here, but from the experience I think we all have, and what we can expect is when there's a there's nice days before the race, and when the weather forecast says that there will be some rain, then there will be some rain, but we don't know at which stage it will come. And for this we are prepared, but for sure, let's say this season at the NLS preparation races and also at the quali race, we didn't have rain. So that means it's the first time for me, for myself, and also for us that we will expect rain. And for this we have also to test and practice, and this we will do in the qualifying.
And how does that work then? How do you've got two cars, Falken Motorsports got two Porsches in the race, you're listed in both of them. I'll come on to that in a moment. But how do you decide then how the work is, and I say work because it is, it's finding things out, it's collecting data. How is that work split up between the two cars? Is it done totally independently, or do you have to have a team mentality to get the data that you need?
It's definitely a team mentality. So in the end, the whole team wants to be successful, and for this we try to be or to be as quick as possible in terms of collecting data. And for this we made a plan depending on the situation what we will have. But for this we made a plan, and we will test different things, because just to give you an example, we also have the different rain tires. So there's not just one rain tire, not just one full wet or a wet tire. So there's different specs also. And this we want to find out which is the best and in which area and temperature window it will work. And if you do this just every car independent, then for sure you lose some driving time, and this we don't want to.
And do you then have an advantage perhaps than some of the other competitors, because working with Falken as the Falken, effectively the Falken named team and the Falken Works team, does that give you access to things that some of the other competitors who are working with other tyre manufacturers don't have?
I mean, in the end, I hope, but to be fair, it's clear, but to be fair, also the other manufacturers, they are working hard, and they are well known, so have a lot of experience around the world, and especially also at the Nordschleife. So for sure they will also be well prepared. And in the end, we focus on ourselves. We, as I said, we have a plan, we have a strategy. We work together as a team, and that's, I think, the best way what we can do, and this should help us.
And how does it work for you then? I mentioned you entered in both the 44 and the 33 cars, different teammates in those two cars. Will you drive both of the chassis in the lead up to the race? Will you concentrate on one? And how does that work from you putting in your feedback to those two different car crews?
Yeah, I'm lucky and I'm happy to be on both cars, this I can say. And in the end, I have to drive both cars before the race because this is a rule. You need to drive 2 laps minimum in the quali sessions that you are qualified. So that means I will be on both cars, but in general, I will do more than 2 laps on both cars in all these quali sessions. The good thing is that it's the same car. I mean, the same brand, the same.
Yes, good point.
The same car, and we have obviously also the same tires for both cars. So it's a good point. But it's also an interesting point in terms of working again and improving, because you can, like also with the rain tires, you can. Drive 2 different, let's say, ways, 2 different setups, and you get more data and also quicker. And this we will do also.
Do you have a different way of dealing with the 3 other drivers in each of the cars? So in the 33, you've got Lance David Arnold, Thomas Preining, and Dirk Werner. That looks a very strong squad, by the way. In the 44 car, it's yourself, Sven Muller, Alessio Piccarello, and Martin Ragginger. That looks a very strong squad as well. There's no weak links in either of that. But do you have to relate to those 2 different sets of drivers differently, or is it all this collegiate atmosphere still?
It's we have a good atmosphere. It's all very professional drivers. I mean, there is no difference. I have not to deal anything different, and it's also good. But this is also important because it's a team. We are a team. We want, like I said at the beginning, we have an aim. We want to be successful, and therefore we have to work together. And so for me, it's completely the same if I drive on the 33 or 44.
Do you have to remind yourself which car you're in? I mean, you said they're the same. I'm Falcon in the past have ran 2 different manufacturers, which I always thought was very brave. That's not the case now. But you get into the 33 and you jump out of the 33, and maybe a couple of hours later, you jump into the 44. Do you have to have in your mind which car you are to remember if you see your number up on the board or anything like that?
It's only when I think when both cars entering the pit lane, then I have to be concentrated and more focused where I have to jump in. But if there's just one car coming in after another, then it's quite easy. But for sure, it will be also the situation that both cars come in. But I have a team behind me which will help me there and lead me there.
And for you then, does that mean that you will do more driving than anybody else, or do you split your time between the 2 cars? Because there are some regulations about how much rest you've got to have, and that's not car specific, that's driver specific, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. The rule is that you need to have out of 3 maximum you can do 3 hours at once, and then you need to rest for 2 hours, and it doesn't matter if you change the car or if you drive just for 1 car. So that means I need always to have these 2 hours of rest. That's mandatory. I mean, we will see how much more I will drive, but I guess I will drive more than if I would be just on 1 car.
It's been said of most of the endurance races that we cover around the world, whether it's Le Mans or the Rolex 24, and even now the Nürburgring, that it is an endurance race because it's 24 hours, but it isn't an endurance race when you get in the car and your thumb comes off the the pit lane speed limiter. Not for you guys at the front anymore, Klaus, is it? It's flat out from the moment you leave till the moment you come back in the pits.
Yeah, definitely. It's a sprint race over 24 hours, and this on the best but most difficult track in the world. So it isn't easy, but we love this. We love the track, and also I love the challenge here. And like I said, it's 24 hours of sprint racing, so flat out.
Flat out, absolutely. It's why we love it as well. Plenty of strategy to look out for as well. Looks like everybody's going to be doing the sort of standard 8-lap stints if everything goes to plan. Where do you find the biggest challenge then, Klaus, as we head towards the race? And when you're in that race, what's the biggest thing? Is it the traffic? Is it the changing weather conditions? Is it the track itself? What is it?
So in the race, it's definitely everything. It's the track, it's the changing weather, and also the traffic. But if I have to choose one, I would say it's the changing weather, because if you always choose, let's say, if the weather is changing, and if you always choose the right tire, you have done already something really good, because it's easy. No, it's really easy to take a wrong decision and to take a wrong tire, because it's not that you cannot compare this to a normal Grand Prix circuit, which has 5 or 6 kilometers. We have more or less 25 kilometers, and for sure it's not raining. The rain is not starting at the whole track. So it can be that there are some areas where it's wet and some are dry, and to make the right tire choice, it's not an easy one. And if you do this correct, you have done something really good already.
I always think when the weather's changing that actually nobody's on the right tyre for the whole lap, because you can be on the right tyre for a part of the track and completely the wrong tyre for another part of the track. It's an extraordinary thing to do. You're a professional racing driver. This is how you earn your living. You're a total pro. You drive GT3 cars, you drive other cars around the world. But is there something special still for you about coming to drive in the Nürburgring 24, and particularly, of course, on the Nordschleife? Does it still excite you, even with all of your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited. I'm happy to be here, and I still love what I'm doing, and this is the most important, because if there's no excitement anymore there, I think it would be time to rethink everything, because in the end you need to be excited, you need to love it, otherwise you cannot do it perfect, in my opinion.
I know exactly what you mean, because I feel exactly the same about my job, and I think a lot of our listeners and viewers will understand what you're saying. Wish you all the best, Klaus. I know you're all good, but there's a lot of good entries in that top class. You've got to have a bit of luck on the Nordschleife as well, haven't you? It's not, doesn't matter how much you plan, doesn't matter how good you are, sometimes that little bit of luck just makes the difference. Thanks, Klaus, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best, and enjoy the race.
Of course we will enjoy the race. Klaus Bachler from Falcon Motorsport, 2 Porsches for him, and the logistics of getting the drive time right, just part of the equation here at the Nürburgring 24 hours. Thanks to Klaus for some time earlier on. And it has come to pass, Bruce Jones, that the weather, to quote a famous line from the movie Le Mans, the rain that we had been expecting has arrived. But in true Nordschleife and Nürburgring fashion, it hasn't arrived all at the same time and everywhere around the circuit.
Shiny and slippery at Exmüller, fairly much dry when the drivers start their route onto the Nordschleife and go through Hatzenbach. So easy for us to comment on from the commentary box, but exactly what Klaus was saying. The weather is the biggest opponent out there. How many laps? He's not yet 30, but how many laps has Klaus Bachler done around the Nordschleife? He is an absolute regular here. And also, as you highlighted there, John, the amount of development work he does for Falcon tyres. He has just clocked it all up. But every single lap on the Nordschleife is different. He knows that. We know that. And right now, for a lot of the drivers, they're finding out, well, it's just adding another chapter to their experience, this great circuit.
At RSL_studio, hashtag RSLN24. Hello to Mercurius, to Subarashi, to all of our regulars. Jesse Young, all set. I think that might be from the other side of the world, because there's a picture of Jesse outside. That's the National Motor Museum at Bathurst, Mount Panorama. James Counter, looking forward to the session this morning, multitasking, listening to the coverage, and the end of midweek motorsport. And that, of course, included our preview and a very interesting interview with Jim Glickenhaus as he was leaving the circuit, actually, and heading to the restaurant. Hello to Sarah Rigby. She says it's all right in the world. First car out on track was the Manta Foxtail. And it was indeed, although it came straight back around and back into the pits with a half or a Grand Prix lap, install lap. At this time of the week, we still have the cones out on the transition from the Nordschleife to the Grand Prix circuit, which allows people to come back around and straight back into the pits should they want to, or to do a warm-up lap on the Grand Prix circuit and then head out onto the track. What that does mean, though, is that you can't come into the pits directly off the end of the Nordschleife. That will change when we get to the race. For now, I accept that many of you will be tuning in via radio-show.co.uk to the live sound and vision. Then if you're seeing the cones there, it's not roadworks. It is, in fact, the fact that you've got to come in, do effectively a slow-down lap of the Grand Prix circuit before you come in to the back of the pits. And if you're looking for some timing, it is timing.radioshow.limited, and that'll get you onto the timing that we're watching here in the booth. Amazing to think already, Peter Mackay, that we've had getting on for 20 minutes and nobody's done more than a lap. This is the recalibration of your brain that you need to go through at the Nürburgring.
Indeed, it's a complete adjustment to what even the drivers will be used to throughout their normal season. Of course, they do get a couple of races at the Nürburgring in the NLS series, hopefully, before they come to the Nürburgring 24. But what I find interesting is that the teams, especially in SP9 and top class, are sending out their most experienced drivers. For example, Augusto Farfus in the BMW Junior team. I know Augusto is still a spring chicken, but he's not as much of a spring chicken as his teammates. But I think that's interesting that given it's so dry around the Grand Prix section, but very wet at the other end of the circuit, interesting that the teams are sending out their old hands to get a feel for the circuit. But it's going to be hard to keep the tyres. If it's dry, those wet tyres are not going to last, but they're going to need them on the other side. I wouldn't want to be in the seat today, I'll be honest.
It is the worst kind of conditions, but it is classic Nürburgring conditions. Octane 126, the number 26 Ferrari in the pit lane, sitting with no tyres on at the moment. What we can say, Bruce, is that those brave souls who went out onto the Nordschleife, there were such different conditions all the way around. We're coming back down the Dottinger Höhe. It looked a little more wet, and we did see cars perhaps that had gone out on either lightly cut slicks maybe, or indeed slicks. They were moving around quite a lot on that high-speed portion of the run for home at the end of the lap.
And they were also moving around, John, quite a lot around the back part of the circuit. It's easy to describe the back part of the circuit, but that section between Verschleifen and Exmüller and even to Bergwerk, it was super, super slippery. And that explains why the fastest lap on the board is just under 10 minutes, 9 minutes 52.7 by Patrick Niederhauser, Lion Speed by Car Collection Audi. But the vast majority of the cars understandably did the outlap and then came back in. Right now looking at a fantastic livery on the number 40 Mercedes, one we have to get used to, black and gold, the 10Q Racing team. But for every driver out there, as Peter pointed out, a little bit of caution goes a very long way, particularly on a day like this where we've got the 2 qualifying sessions, 2 today, 1 tomorrow, then the top 30 shootout. But any time you damage the car, you're on the back foot from there on in.
And talking to Jim Glickenhaus on Midweek Motorsport last night, one of the things he said was he wasn't sure how hard they would be pushing even in the top 30 shootout, because they're a one-car team and they're very busy at the moment, finishing off preparations to go and race in the World Endurance Championship in Portimao next weekend. They're rehashing their Baja Boot trophy truck style competitor, as well as making some changes to their road cars. They don't need to give themselves any further work. Heading out for the first time onto the Grand Prix circuit. We'll see if they go all the way round and back in again. Both of the Fricadelli Porsches. These are the red and white numbers 30 and 31. Racing under a heavy heart, of course. This is the first 24-hour race at the Nürburgring on the Nordschleife since the untimely death of Sabine Schmitz earlier on this year. They have already raced a couple of times here in the Langstrecke series, Bruce, and they've raced successfully those 30 and 31 teams. And they've thrown, to use a very English term, they've thrown the kitchen sink at it this year in terms of the drivers. Porsche factory drivers are a go-go in the 30 and 31.
Hard to know where to look at the quality of that team, but here's a little riding clause. Earl Bamber, Matt Campbell, Mathieu Jaminet, frequent winners in whatever they drive, have not won this event. They're three of the four drivers, along with Nick Tandy in the number 30 Fricadelli Porsche. The sister car's got two previous winners, Fred Machiavicki and Patrick Pilet. Dennis Olsen hasn't won, and amazingly, Maxime Martin hasn't either. I mean, the field at the top end is packed with former winners, unless I go very, very quickly back through my notes. But Maxime seems to have won everything. And actually, a load of drivers here have gone a whole run of second places over not just the years, over the decades here, and are still one short of a victory. But it's a stellar lineup in the 30 and 31 Porsches. And you have to say, Porsche, as a mark, has its tail right up at the moment in GT3 racing. And then we looked at the qualifying race events, and the two Fricadelli Porsches were first and second. So, you know, those two quartets, have to start with a big smile on their face. Hello
to Nikolai B, tuned in from Denmark, listening at the moment on RS1, pictures during the lunch break. He says, looking forward to the race even more so as I'm not working next week. Excellent. Start off your week off in style. Full coverage in sound and vision right across the weekend. Today, Thursday, two qualifying sessions with one qualifying session and the top 30 qualifying shootout, single car shootout, and then warm up in the race on Saturday. Early problem for one of the GT4 Mercedes. That's the Schnitzelam Racing 37 car. Yes, it is. I'm so used to seeing that car in the bright yellow colours of the Schnitzel restaurant chain, but it's in a dark blue, almost navy blue, looks black sometimes, with white and red, and is sporting support from Dorrant Hotels and Resorts, of which there is a Dorrant right here on the final corner of the Grand Prix circuit. That looks to me as though that was a little loop at the top of the foxhole before dropping down under the bridge. Yes, it was. So that was at Arenberg just before the top of the foxhole. Nobody hit it. The car got back into its correct way of pointing, and Jörg Wiebahn from Gummersbach, the German driver, of which there are four in that car. SP8T is the GT4 Mercedes class. Peter Posavec and Andreas Weiland, Guido Wertz in that car with him. No harm, no foul, but proof if proof were needed, Peter, just how difficult it is. That's quite a heavy braking area there, and even with ABS, it looked like Jörg Wiebahn had just dropped it for a moment, but thankfully didn't hit anything.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Like you said, you can't really afford damage at this stage. As good as these crews are to get the cars fixed, you really don't want to be on the back foot. But also, of course, the GT4 cars fitted with all the gizmos as well, driver aids that you would see on the equivalent road car as well. So very, very, just shows you just how tricky it is. And it's amazing. It is absolutely bone dry here on the Grand Prix circuit. So this is going to be a nightmare for the tyre manufacturers. And I suppose for a company like Falcon, the car we're looking at on screen right now, well, what a way to prove their products. And I believe Klaus Bachler has hopped into the 33 car to take the first steps out onto the circuit. But coming back to Porsche, I mean, what an entry they have this year. Didn't have a very good year at the Nürburgring last year, but for Fricadelli, never won this race. They've won the NLS races many times, but never won the 24, and what a year to win it would be.
It's Peter Mackay. He's with Bruce Jones and me, John Hindorf, in the Global Broadcast Centre for Radio Show Limited network of audio and visual channels. We've still got a little over an hour of running to go, coming up to 1 o'clock in the afternoon here at the Nürburgring for the opening qualifying session. Opening time on the track this week for the competition cars, at least. I dare say there might have been a few tourist laps earlier on. KTM Crossbow number 75 is heading out of the pits. That's the Christian Menzel, Tim Schrick, Jens Thaler and Marcus Österreich. Cup Class X car. This is the KTM Crossbow GTX. Longer, wider, lower, meaner, and still looking slightly like it's dropped in from outer space or from that hard point of some kind of fighter bomber. Extraordinary looking thing. And the GT2 car being used to some effect earlier on this year, having been talked about for a wee while. KTM, they don't look like anything else on the circuit. That bright red number 75 then heading out onto the circuit, as there are, Bruce, 1 or 2 more people feeling brave enough to head out onto the Nordschleife, including the 911 from Manthey. 911 colour, the greeny yellow, Grello, and 911 number as well from them. Absolutely Manthey, from literally just round the corner at their workshops at Moistpath.
Yeah, I mean, to many people, it doesn't seem as though it's any race on the Nürburgring Nordschleife without the Grello Porsches. They've had considerable success in recent years, and for other people, it's not a Nürburgring race if there isn't the ancient Volker Streichek-driven Opel Manta. I think that's only in the race to link back to the early days when I used to come to the N24, because that was racing then. And in fact, if we could drop in a couple of Sierra Cosworths and early 1990s or late 80s BMW M3s, then I'll be right back in the mix for those early days. But the Grello Porsche, fantastic lineup. Matteo Caroni, Michael Christensen, Kevin Estre and Lars Kern. They've already shown their form in the NLS this year. And to me, any Porsche with Kevin Estre on board has got a very good shot at victory. Oh, another spinner. Car
Hoffa Racing,
81.
number 81 BMW, that, Bruce. And that's heading up to Adenauer Forst at the end of the Foxhole. So clearly that part of the track, Bruce, is very, very tricky indeed. BMWs of various hue. That's the Martin Kroll, Michael Kroll, Chantal Prince, formerly Chantal Kroll, of course. Gustav, now I know I struggle with Gustav's name, Enjaringer, I think is how you say that, the Austrian driver among the...
Yeah, I think you're pretty close. Enjaringer. Yes.
Enjaringer, yeah.
He's from Frankenberg, that's easier to say.
Yes, the man from Frankenberg. M3 CSL that's gone around in the red, white and black of Hoffa Racing. And I'm wrong about where that is, actually, excuse me. That, yeah, it's good, Pete, you're spot on. It's coming out of up to the ice corner. So he's sort of on the way home. More than halfway around. One of the places that there are a lot of photographs taken there. So that was coming out of Brünchen. Possibly just got the left-hand side tyres too much onto the block paving there. I was about to say, that's interesting, it looks like they put a new gravel trap in. But of course, it wasn't that gravel trap because it wasn't that corner. Still, we're dialing ourselves in as well. Apologies for that. At RSL_studio, still an hour to go in this session. The Rabbit is at the head of the field at the moment for Audi Sport Team Car Collection. Christopher Haase in the number 2 car, just put in a 9:25.0. And that, Bruce, is still a minute slower than we would expect to see on a fully dry track.
Exactly so, but the fact of the matter, he managed to shave a mere half minute off the previous best lap, as good as, and I think next time around we will see those chipping away. But seriously, a third of the circuit, I would reckon, possibly even half, have got the sort of sheen on it that caught out that number 81 BMW. You could see, even from a low shot, the sheen on the top of the circuit. And again, you don't have many options around the Nordschleife. It's super, super narrow. The driver on board the 81 BMW had his wheels on the grass on one side, tried to get it pointing the other way, then had the front wheels on the grass on the other side. There's so little space to renegotiate and to manoeuvre when things have gone off. But windscreen wipers on periodically. It is largely a dry track, but they have to go around a couple of times to work out the back area of the circuit, and certainly as we've just seen around Brunchen, still slippery. Not much of a breeze today to shift it, unfortunately.
24 classes this year in the 24 hours. During the race, in our hourly updates, we'll do as normal and split those up. And we've had 71 cars posted time, so round about half of the field, but still some reticence to go out. And I think, given the fact that the sun is trying, Peter, to break through the cloud, I'm not sure with even an hour to go there's any real rush for people to get out now, unless they want to try something with their intermediate settings and are trying wet weather running around the far side of the track.
Yeah, I think this actually could be, although not for outright lap times, this could be a critical session, because it looks like we're going to have changeable weather all weekend long. And of course, to get these cars dialed in, this is going to give them critical data for all of the teams. But I think that the teams that are putting out their most experienced drivers are really going to, that's quite an obvious choice. For example, the Manthey number 911 Porsche, I mean, you couldn't really put anyone better in the whole field in your car than Kevin Estre. Of course, broke the lap record back at the first NLS race of the season, which had stood for 3 years. So, but Kevin's another guy, never won the Nürburgring 24 hour. Come very close, but I'm sure he's wanting to put that right this weekend.
Can't miss that one in the car park either, with its yellow and green colours. Very bright indeed. It's coming out of the pits a moment or two ago, the Ford Mustang in its black and striped configuration.
Alternatively fueled cars.
Correct.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And there is a great history here of manufacturers trying different things. Indeed, Bruce, one of the cars in SPX, which are effectively there's two cars in that category. The Glickenhaus is one. The other is a Mercedes-Benz, and you might think, why is an AMG GT3 car in SPX? It's because they're trying some new technology in terms of steering on that car, and Darren Turner's involved in that.
Steering's quite a useful thing around the Nordschleife.
I always think so.
So let's hope they've got their sums right. But again, it's always interesting, and you look back over the years, over the decades, at how Le Mans has frequently, well, we've now got the fixed experimental entry, but it has always been a place of experimentation. And I think with a field this large, there's very much a place for cars that are doing things differently. So just remember, this number 25 Space Drive Racing Mercedes with the interesting steering technique. We'll find out more from Darren Turner, hopefully at a later date. And then, of course, 704, a huge crowd favourite on the Nordschleife, the Glickenhaus Racing SCG 004C. It seems to belong, but again, John, you were touching on just how much motorsport Glickenhaus is doing. We as people feel there could be there's no such thing as too much motorsport, but the logistics of the Glickenhaus squad must be just extraordinary at the moment.
Yeah, they are working very hard. If you want to know what we're talking about, Jim Glickenhaus on Midway Motorsport last night. During the break, you can go to radio-show.co.uk and either download that or listen on demand. Hello to Stephen Lloyd. Audio only for him at the moment. Pesky work getting in the way. And Gareth, yes, I know the phrase is throw everything but the kitchen sink. But my point about the 30 and 31 is they've got the kitchen sink, the dishwasher, the oven, the microwave, and the countertop mixer. They have got everything. Yes, absolutely. At RSL_studio, hashtag RSLN24. Chris Haase coming to the end of another lap on a rapidly drying Dottinger, much drier than earlier on. And I do think that those who stayed in and literally kept their powder dry may have done themselves a favour here in terms of at least avoiding potential disaster. Underneath the Bilstein Bridge, down the hill, braking unfeasibly late, already on the upslope through Tiergarten, almost pointing the car at the end of the Armco barrier at the end of that run, and then through onto the Grand Prix circuit. Here's Haase. Let's see where he stops the clock. It's going to be a 9:22, so a little bit slower than he's already done. I wonder what tyres he's on. Impossible to see at the moment. A little bit faster, my apologies. Yeah,
2 and a bit seconds. But again, I was going to say the mark of a driver and their excellence is consistency in terms of pace. And I think the difference in that was probably just the track has dried out by roughly 2.1 seconds worth around the course of the lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, I think, going to be the story for this session. Number 15 Audi is out on the Nordschleife at the moment. That's the Audi Sport Team Phoenix LMS GT3 R8 with Dries Van Teur. Now for both Van Teurs in the race, and he's got a pretty clean run at the moment as he's heading out into the countryside for what will effectively be his third tour around the Nürburgring. In fact, already on his way back, that was coming down through Flansgarden and now into the second carousel, the Kleiner Carousel. Gallows Hill, that interesting triple apex right-hander that is so important to get the last part of that right, to get the fast run onto the Dottinger Höhe, where, as Adam Christodoulou was telling Bruce and myself last night, the aerodynamic slipstream is so important and so powerful. Audi, one of the quicker cars down through here. AMGs, maybe not so much. We'll keep an eye on the time here. He's coming up to 9 minutes now. He's looking to better a 9:22. And remember, although this is the first session, Peter, this all counts, because let's say it all goes horribly wrong and we get bad weather right the way through. Certainly for those outside the top 30, times do count here. We are effectively in a qualifying session.
We do, and particularly for this car that we're looking at on screen, the number 15 of Dries Van Teur, they are actually not automatically into the top Q2 session, so they need a good session here. You're right, and but I tell you what, this very impressive young man, 23-year-old Belgian Dries Van Teur. If there's anybody who can do it, it's him. Won at Suzuka, Bathurst, Zolder, and here at the Nürburgring as well. In fact, he won in the year when, for those who have seen the Porsche Endurance documentary, when his brother Lawrence lost out at the last moment in 2019. It was actually his younger brother Dries that took the victory from there. So yeah, I think if we get rain tonight and maybe tomorrow as well, this could be an important session for them.
Through.
He's just gone top as you completed that, Peter. Just went top by just under a second. So we know he's quick, and he's just gone and proved it yet again. Dries Van Teur, a star in whatever car, but he's almost always in an Audi, and he knows these cars. And don't forget, of course, when his older brother Lawrence was racing, Dries was always in the back of the garage, and he's been like a sponge. He's soaked up all the strategy that Audi Sport Team WRT used to use, and so when he hit the ground, when he was old enough to come racing, he was already very, very well armed.
KTM with a problem coming back towards the pits with Marcus Osterreich behind the wheel in that number 75 bright red car. Looked like the right-hand window is just popping a little bit. Now, it might, those of you trackside might be thinking, oh, is that the door open? But no, it's not, because the whole clamshell moves on those cars. So, looks much... Now, you see, I've said that. And has he just got it cracked open to get a little bit of air through it? Maybe he has. difficult to say that, Peter.
Yeah, that's it's almost like the motorcycle helmet strategy in the rain,
Yes.
where you just crack it open a finger's width to stop it from fogging up. Well, I would hope that KTM have got a demister in there, otherwise they're going to have a long weekend. But what an extraordinary looking car, these KTMs. They are space age, and tell you what, the GT2 must be impressive to get Hans Stuck out of retirement, the 2004 winner.
Yeah, I remember him driving here in a Lamborghini with two of his boys, possibly all three of them actually, in a year when we were interrupted by rain. Where one of the junior Stuck getting ready to go back out with the cars in Parc Fermé, and they just put the rain cover over the car and left him in it, and he went to sleep. He was so relaxed. Extraordinary stuff just before the resumption of the race. Dries van Toor out of the Audi number 15. Stippy's helmet getting in there, I think it is. Frank Stippler.
Have the prize for the most racing laps completed of anybody in this field around the Nordschleife. He's really been there, seen it, done it, and we've seen he's very, very keen this year. His form in the NLS races, where he normally drives a minimum of one car. You can see why he's hugely raced by Audi. But the Nürburgring is his happy stamping ground, and that is a great lineup in the number 15 Phoenix car. We've got Robin Freins, who hasn't won this race, but certainly of the right calibre to do so. Very much wetter all of a sudden around the back of the circuit. Yeah. Matthias Drudy, who's one of the really, well, he's not a young gun anymore. He's 2 seasons of being a young gun. He's maybe established now in the 3rd season. Great driver lineup. Frank Stippler, Dries van Toor, Robin Freins, and Matthias Drudy. I think the number 15 Team Phoenix, Audi Sport Team Phoenix car is going to be a really fabulous entry this time.
It's Bruce Jones, along with Peter Mackay and John Hindhaugh in the Global Broadcast Centre. Keep the comments coming in. Hashtag RSL N24 at RSL_studio. Dries just giving the benefit of his most recent knowledge of what's going on around the circuit to the incoming driver. Meantime, further down the pit lane, the Wochenspiegel Ferrari, one of 2 488s here this weekend, the number 22 car. We discuss this every year, and it will come up on Twitter, I've no doubt, why Ferrari haven't done as well here. They've had a couple of podium finishes down through the years. Jörg Weiss, Indy Doncia, Jochen Krumbach, Daniel Kalvitz in the WTM powered by Phoenix number 22. So Bruce, in terms of experience and knowledge, both behind the wheel and behind the wheel guns, if you will, there's plenty there for that car, and we've seen both that and the Octane 128, the numbered 28 car, show well in some of the shorter races.
We have, and I mean, it's not to be underplayed, John, just the value of the experience, not just the laps on the ring, but the racing laps, the ins and outs, the pits, and they really, that's the thing with the Nürburgring Langstrecken series. It's all season long. The 24 hours, it's a jewel in the crown. But for a lot of these drivers, they like the fact they get 8 or 9 races and a lot of seat time. But that seat time, when they bring it to the 24 hours, is really, really useful to have. And Octane 126, that's car 26, and the WTM powered by Phoenix entry, Indy Doncia, Daniel Kalvitz, who I think is a real star, Jochen Krumbach, and Jörg Weiss. That's a car that will have its moments, but again, we've got a lot of cars running in the Pro-Am class, and that's one of those. And so necessarily they won't be challenging for outright victory against the Pro lineups, but they have their own battle to fight within SP9 with that special Pro-Am class, with I think around 10 entries are running in the Pro-Am category, maybe 11.
Yeah, decent entry this year. Clouds still overcast, or clouds still overhead, should I say, but in the pit lane, at least, the drizzle that greeted the competitors as they went out earlier on, some 45 minutes ago, has seemed to have abated. We're exactly halfway through the session, and more issues for a Hoffa Racing BMW, and the red, white and black, number 81, is now stationary. That's the car that earlier on had a wee spin out on the circuit. A little bit closer to home here. And, oh, is there something hanging down underneath that car that's grazing the ground? Maybe the rear bodywork or the diffuser under the bumper, or is that just, perish the thought, a bit of heat haze? I think it might be. All looks all right there. Exhaust pipe's not exactly looking symmetrical there, so there might have been a wee ding. But at the moment, Peter Mackay, no fire from the BMW M3's engine.
No, and that's a good sign. Especially it's actually a CSL model as well.
It is,
I hope it's not got that horrible, what's it, the SMG gearbox. They weren't very nice. They've come a long way, those gearboxes. But yes, it's in a class of its own, actually, in SP6.
Literally.
Class, is that BMW M3. So it's guaranteed a win.
So long as they can get to the end. And, you know, that,
yes.
And it is one of the great things about this race, Peter, isn't it? That down through the years, it is very much, if you bring it, we will let you race it. We'll find a class for you. Now, you might say, and there will be people watching and listening now, who will say, but what's the point of that? Well, the point of that is not whether they win their class or not. The point is, A, get to the end, and B, let's see what else we can beat and how far up the standings. And it might be get into the top half. It might be get into the top 100. It might be get into the top 50. Everyone has their own goals here, Peter.
Well, exactly, and it's a little bit, I was liking the Nürburgring Nordschleife a little bit too like the Isle of Man TT. You know, not every competitor turns up at the start line with the chance of the outright victory, but you're racing the track as much as you are your competitors, and you're always chasing better lap times. Another car I would throw into the mix is, again in a class of its own, in SP2T, is the number 165 Hyundai i20N, which of course is a brand new model in the ever-increasing N range by the Korean manufacturer. Now it is a road car just about to launch, but what a way to prove its performance credentials than here. Not just, I mean, we see road cars on the Nürburgring all the time, but in race conditions, totally different factor entirely.
And that also is a proud tradition here. VW launched the Scirocco here, or at least had the Scirocco racing before we'd even seen the road-going version. Hyundai have been very much involved in showcasing various cars here. Andrea Adamo, the head of Hyundai Racing in Europe, is busy in Sardinia this weekend with the rallying. But my goodness, haven't they taken the competition world by storm? Their engine technologies for WRC and World Touring cars, and of course we have a round of the World Touring cars here this weekend, which I believe is going to be the debut of the new Audi RS3 TCR. We'll get that confirmed by Chris Renke from Audi Sport, who we'll try and grab a chat with over the weekend. Still waiting for that BMW number 81, the Hoffa car, to be recovered. First attempt not successful, KNOT successful on that one, as the tow rope has come astray. So, no,
it's not.
Right over left, left over right. It's not that hard, is it? So the usual early running then. Everybody just knocking the rust off. Most of them, as Bruce said earlier, will have been to an NLS race earlier on, or the qualifying 6 hours a couple of weeks ago, which was an absolute barnstormer. We're a bit of a misnomer calling it the qualifying race. It's just another opportunity for people to get some time in, because there isn't any bumping going on when we've only got such a small field of not the full 170, which is the maximum nowadays. But it is just getting yourself back in, doing that first couple of laps and trying to remember exactly where the Nürburgring Nordschleife goes. You can visualise it, of course, as much as you want. Do like I do, and before you go to sleep every night, just visualise a lap. Peter Kate, my old teammate from Aston Martin, who's here this weekend defending a championship, actually, back with Mathol Racing in a Cayman, Porsche Cayman GT4 Club Sport. I'll find his number later on. We'll keep an eye out for some fan favourites during our updates as well. Peter can do a lap of the Nürburgring Nordschleife to order effectively. It's absolutely extraordinary. Fantastic.
Can you do it when sitting in a chair, providing the right sound effects? I always find that very useful in the evening.
With a dinner plate in his hands.
Absolutely.
I've seen video on the socials of him doing that. He did a Facebook challenge, which was any circuit in the world, match yourself to anybody's onboard lap. And he said, I'll start it off. I'm going to start with the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Well, that just killed the challenge, because nobody's going to be able to do anything better than that. And he was movement perfect on that lap. If you watched he had the screen with the onboard lap next to the camera, facing the camera. He was blindfolded, and he had the dinner plate in his hand. Extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And
I think my level would have been Hidden Hill as a starter.
Very good.
Something short with a handful of corners. That's
Rockingham. I'm thinking Rockingham. No, I mean round the outskirts of Rockingham. Yeah, not on the infield. Possibly could have done Northampton Oval. I think might have been able to get that one.
The mighty Brayfield circuit. What fun that was.
Yep.
Just a thought. Earlier when we had the interview with Falcon Motorsports Klaus Bachler, he said actually so far in the NLS up to this point this year there's been no rain, but what he forgot to add was the fact that one of the rounds had rain that turned to snow about an hour before the start of the event, and we crossed our fingers and hoped the race could happen, but alas, snow on the Nordschleife in April, it doesn't clear quickly. But this circuit, John, it can throw everything and anything. But I just wanted to sort of pick up on the fact that the circuit hasn't exactly been dry throughout the NLS Challenge so far this year.
It's the number 86 718 Cayman GTS, my apologies, not Club Sport, for Peter Kate. And he's turned up, he's paired up with a couple of Luxembourg drivers, Pierre Alain and Jan Munhausen, and Jacek Hedis from Poland. Peter winning his class last year, and I spoke to him last year at the circuit, bumped into him at dinner and then at breakfast, and very late call for him to get that drive last year, and he repaid the confidence shown in him by the team, and he's back again in another Cayman. Says it's one of the better cars he's ever driven round there, considering how standard it actually is. Has been part of Aston Martin's wins in class down through the years, of course, and very bravely agreed to be my teammate at the 24 Hours of COTA a few years ago in an Aston Martin GT4, which actually had provenance from this race as well. The GT8 as it was, with the slightly higher developed aero package. So moving now into the last 35 minutes or thereabouts, with no doubt in my mind, Peter, the weather improving massively. We actually do have a little bit of heat haze on the Grand Prix circuit, and I think now it has to be slicks. You've got to throw a set of slicks on if you're heading out to the Nordschleife.
Yeah, it appears so, unless there's been a burst of bad weather out on the other side of the circuit. But yes, absolutely. I don't think you could, regardless what it's like on the other end of the circuit, I don't think wet tyres would survive with the circuit as it is here in the Grand Prix area. It's completely bone dry right now, so that dried up quite quickly. It seems to have been quite a slow start for the BMWs. It's mostly dominated by Audis and Porsches in the time so far in SP9, and likewise for Mercedes. It's I wonder if there's something in that. Of course, the Mercedes and the BMW, both big front engines cars, where the Porsche, of course, rear engined, and Audi in the middle. I don't know if there's anything in that.
Adam Christodoulou saying on Midweek Motorsport last night on our preview that the warmer it got, the better it was for the AMGs. That didn't give him great hope, Bruce, for this weekend, given the weather forecast. But we know that when the sun is out here and it beats down on what is actually quite new tarmac now, the sections that are replaced around the Nürburgring Nordschleife on a regular rolling basis. And it's quite dark, therefore the UV index, if you like, of the track gets up, and the track gets hot quite quickly once there's direct sunlight on it.
Yeah, I've noticed a big change with that this year, and it's a point very well made, John. Just talking about the BMWs for a second, last year's winning crew, the ones that therefore have the number one on the door, very late out. We've got 125 starters, only 121 have hit the track yet, but at the bottom of the time charts for now is John Edwards, who's showing with Nicky Katzberg, Philip Egg, and Nick Yaloli. Those three all won last year. He wasn't in that crew, but he's really flying. So he's suddenly going to go right towards the top end of the chart. But at the moment, it's two Audis, a Porsche, an Audi, two Porsches. So as you say, the top BMW not right at the top. It's only in 8th place. Alexander Sims at the moment. But look out for John Edwards, the American racer, absolutely flying. But I think they just waited. They saw the greasy track at the start. They're sitting there. They're confident. And Rover Racing have had a phenomenal past 2 years in terms of winning things. So I think they know what they're up to. Expect them to be up at the front end.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's very smart running, if I'm honest. We mentioned the SPX earlier on. Thomas Mütsch is out for Glickenhaus in the SCG 004C, which was getting dynoed as late as Wednesday for its, as I say that, of course, it just pits the 704. As late as Wednesday, that car was getting dynoed for its BOP, but they're very, very excited about that car's chances this year. The other car in SPX has got Darren Turner behind the wheel, and this is the Space Drive car that we were talking about earlier on. Now, you think to yourself, as I said, why is that car in SPX? Because it's listed as a Mercedes-AMG GT3. Proving this new technology, and we sort of alluded to it earlier on, and Bruce mentioned it, there is no physical connection between the steering wheel and the front wheels. So it is steer by wire. Now, we've had throttles that have been drive by wire. We've got brakes that are brake by wire in road cars and in some competition cars. I remember, must be the better part of 20 years ago, talking to a truck manufacturer who wanted to do away with all of the driving controls and have the truck just driven on a joystick, much as the same as Airbus did, changing the whole thought process about flying aircraft. And at the time they weren't allowed to do it because you had to have a physical connection for braking and a backup system, and particularly for the steering. A little bit of rain on the far side of the circuit, by the way, coming up from Bergwerk and heading up the hill, as Romain Dumas just done a 9 minutes and 3 second lap. So anyway, the Space Drive car, they are developing a steer by wire system, and that's why it's in the experimental category. Just thought we'd get that one out there. Romain Dumas for Rutronic Racing in the 911 GT3R that he shares with a reasonably experienced crew, it has to be said. Nico Müller, Patrick Niederhauser and Marcus Winkelhock, Julian Andlau, Tobias Müller and Tristan Vidas. Andlau, very quick French driver, German and Estonian, Müller and Vidas. But Romain Dumas
swapped for Vantor.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
That's right, he has.
Vidas has been subbed out for
That's right, he
Lawrence
has.
Vantor.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I must make that change on my list.
I just want to blow the trumpet. I said John Edwards was going pretty well on his first flying lap. He's fastest of all, 8 minutes 47. So we just have Romain Dumas going top by some margin of 11 seconds, and he's now nearly 16 seconds down on the flying American. So Rover Racing, the team that won this race last year with the BMW, the Spa 24 Hours with a Porsche, showing their diversity and excellence, and they've put down the early marker. And the sister car with Sheldon van der Linde has now slotted into second place. So waiting a little bit, having an extra coffee in the garage, has worked very well for the team.
Romain Dumas, who, of course, is the king of the hill as far as America's Race to the Clouds is concerned, took the IDR Volkswagen basically prototype. It was an enormous chassis, wasn't it, that car was built on in a very short time indeed. As into the pits, the GT Tyre Motorsport by WS Racing. That's the Carrie Schreiner, Celia Martin, Pippa Mann and Christina Nielsen crewed car, 2 Germans, and Pippa is listed as USA on the starting list, but hails from the UK, although lives in Indianapolis now. And Christina Nielsen, champion of IMSA racing, of course, following in her dad's footsteps. I'm pretty certain Lars Eric has raced here in the past. Romain Dumas, just go back to that. I was there to watch that. Mad as a balloon. Absolutely mad as a balloon. Smashed the hill record in the electric car. And then his longtime driving partner, Romain Dumas, did an exhibition drive around the Nürburgring Nordschleife in a de-restricted and heavily modified Porsche 919 Hybrid Evo with pretty much everything bar the gearbox changed on it. So optimised engine, optimised battery pack, special set of tyres from Michelin, special aero, special motors, and a very special drive. And I spoke to both of them at Rennsport after they'd done that at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, and said to both of them, right, okay, which one of you thinks the other one was the most foolish? And I expected driving up the mountain was the daftest thing ever. But Romain said, I'd rather drive up the mountain than try and go around the Nürburgring at the kind of speed Timo did. And I said to Timo, how on the edge were? He said, no, there was a bit left. There was a bit left. I wanted to have another go, but the boss wouldn't let me. Extraordinary. Was it under 6 minutes for that? It was something ridiculous.
5:19 for just the Nordschleife, though.
Yes. Yeah. Unbelievable. Listen, we know it was a car that was specially built for that, but take nothing away from what was going on with that extraordinary stuff. And Romain Dumas actually back at the mountain in the race to the clouds for the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb in early July or late June this year. I'll have to check on that. You can find that on the website. But he's back. Thank you. So it is the last weekend in June, and he's back with a very famous name in American and global endurance racing. Champion Porsche are back. They've taken a GT2 RSR RS and championised it, and Pikes Peaked-ized it, so the aero is a bit radical, and Romain is going to take that up the hill and try and become king of the mountain this year in what looks to be a very competitive field, and we'll have some coverage of that for you as we did last year on the Radio Show Limited network of audio and video channels. More details about that in the coming weeks via Midweek Motorsport and the socials. Speaking of that, RSL_studio. So coming down to the last 25 minutes. Steady as she goes, Bruce, but I think at this time of the week, that's the right thing to do.
Yes, and I think it's an interesting point, John. Initially, we had the Audis and the Porsches at the top of the chart, and then we talked, in fact, Peter raised the point, the larger front ends in BMW M6 and Mercedes AMG, nowhere to be seen, bottom end of the top 10. And now we've got 2 BMWs, first and second, and Fabian Schiller has gone third fastest in the one of the Team Get Speed Works Mercedes. So it is all changed. Got a huge margin across the top 10 cars, but that's because top 4 cars, nearly 10 seconds. It'll be much tighter come the top 30 qualifying, but I think that just reiterates it was a case of the track being greasy to start with, wet in parts, and then being cautious. But I think it's been a very, very standard session. It's about getting out there, and if you're Darren Turner, your name's on the windscreen of car number 25, you're in the car we've been talking about, the Space Drive Racing Mercedes with the steer by, operate by wire steering, a concept that still worries me. If you have an electrical glitch, a technical glitch, and suddenly you have no steering, what do you do then, John?
Stop. Really, really quickly. I presume it has some kind of fail-safe on it. But whether there's a backup and a mechanical backup, I don't know. It's a question for DT, isn't it? We really should check that out with them. We really should. Back into the pits for Fricadelli's Porsche. That is the number 31 with the yellow streaks on the front end and the yellow pinstripe underneath the shade band. Otherwise, they appear, to my old eyes at least, Peter, you're a bit younger than Bruce and I, but otherwise I think they are the same, but they've got slightly different wing mirror colours. The streaks on the front of the dive planes, as some people call them, and there's a wee band underneath the sponsor logos there, and the 31 is the yellow. I've noticed that through the season. They've stayed with that for the 24.
Yes, I believe they are completely identical apart from that. So carrying the sponsorship of Abelin, of course, named after Klaus Abelin, the team owner, and his very successful meatball company, and of course Fru Beer from just north of the Nürburgring in Cologne. And they certainly did on the road cars. I don't know if they do anymore. But they used to have a button on the steering wheel, which every car has for the drink system, but it was, instead of labelling water, it was labelled Fru, which probably tells you all you need to know about the spirit of Fricadelli racing and what they do when the cars are parked up after the checkered flag. They party as hard as they race, I understand.
Hello to Marcus Mahi, who's listening from Brisbane. He said, I've been listening for a wee while and watching. Amazing that Max Martin hasn't won this race. Nobody who saw his final stint at the BMW Z4 GT3 a few years will ever forget this. And he's mighty in the rain as well, Marcus. You're spot on. Thanks for that. At RSL_studio. Good to have your company. Don't forget, we've got our enhanced timing. You just put in your browser timing.radioshow, all one word, .limited, LIMITED. It'll come up, and you've got the opportunity to look, particularly at the weekend. I think it'll come into its own as ever. Thanks to James for all the hard work he's put into it for us again.
One of the things, John, that's worth reiterating, we're all used to standard circuit lengths, typical Grand Prix circuits, and 3 timing sectors, but this one's a big one. It's 25.378 kilometres, or in miles 15.769, so that's split into 9 timing sectors. And because of that, I can tell you that John Edwards has just gone through sectors 3, 4, 5 and 6, setting the fastest times of all. Rover Racing still top, his new time 8 minutes 34, so it's a real tool to help us stay on top of everything.
Yeah, and if you're following along as well, whether you're trackside or further afield, then there's a GPS Auger as well. If you run iOS-equipped devices, all of the cars nowadays with GPS trackers on them used to only be the top 30, if we were lucky. Through goes Sheldon von der Linde, just coming round onto the start-finish line as he goes through in 8:36.2. Was the Toyota Altis, another one of the oddities, entered by Toyota Gazoo Racing Thailand. And we've seen them down through the years with a variety of machinery. That's in the class with the Foxtail Manta. There's a Toyota GT86 in there as well, and the Dacia Logan, the black and white Dacia. I so like seeing that car here because it is absolutely a throwback to when we first started covering this event. Although we've lost now the smaller engined cars, anything under 1600 not allowed now, and we've been trimmed to a maximum of 170, although we're not there this year. Gone are the heady days of, I think 2007 when we first went there, it was 229 starters. Although they'll be getting on for I don't know this year, potentially could be getting on for 200 of the Youngtimer race cars on Friday, which is a race that I would love to do here. Always one of the highlights. See all of the N24 teams standing by their pit boxes, watching that field go out. It is just a never-ending run of automotive and race car history. About every BMW that's ever been raced is out there. strange
the
things.
ultimate answer to why cars should never be put into museums. There's a chance
Correct.
to race, and better than that, it's a chance to race on the Nordschleife
So
as well.
right, Bruce Jones. So right. Where else would you see the, I think unique to Germany, Audi 50 Cup car? We never even got that in the UK. Most people don't even know what an Audi 50 is. It was Audi's badge version of the original Volkswagen Polo. And when they launched it, they did a single mark Cup series for it. And there's not just one, there's 3 or 4 or 5 of them turn up regularly for this. And you go, hey, there's a VW Polo with an Audi badge on. No. It is an Audi 50, and there was a Cup series for it. And people have kept them and keep racing. I love that. It's absolutely outstanding stuff. Outstanding stuff. And that'll be Friday. So for those of you at the track, something to keep an eye open for. Hopefully the weather will play ball, because some of those cars can be handfuls in the wet. We've seen BMW M1s out there in the past. John
New
Edwards
manufacturer at the top, John Fricadelli Racing, showing their hand.
there we go.
Don't forget, they were first and second in the qualifying event a few weeks ago, and suddenly Earl Bamber, maybe he's been encouraged by us pointing out that he hasn't won this race yet, but he's just gone to the top of the charts. 8 minutes 33.5 seconds, so only just 0.6 of a second ahead of the John Edwards Rover Racing BMW, but laying down a marker for a team that's really got its tail up.
You might have been able to hear John Edwards talking there in the background. He was just briefing Philip Eng before he gets into that BMW that they share together with Nicky Katzberg and Nick Yellowly, the man from Solihull in the West Midlands. Has turned himself into a bit of a Nürburgring Nordschleife specialist. Very good indeed. Now, that Toyota Altis that I was talking about on the hats and back a moment or two ago, number 120 car, just slightly getting in the way of the Valkenhorst BMW. He's coming to the end of the hats and back. Do you know what? He didn't. He pulled out the way. That's all he could do there, really. Driver's briefing here, done in 3 tranches normally, 3 different languages. Bear in mind, even with only just shy of 130 cars here, probably an average of 4 drivers per car. So drivers' briefings tend to be split up in these days, of course. They can be done electronically, saving a bit of time.
About the BMW Walkenhorst car. Now, I have in my notes that the Walkenhorst BMWs are on Yokohamas. Is that the case?
This is a bit like Japanese Super GT, Peter. Not all of the manufacturer entries will be on the same tyre. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility to see them change manufacturers during the race. We've seen that not during the race itself, but during the race week. There was a big falling out a few years ago where there was some controversy about one of the tyre manufacturers, and they withdrew all their tyres. So everybody had to go and find other tyres instead. But yes, you're absolutely right. It is not that all AMGs are on X tyre and all Audis are on Y tyre. Jim Glickenhaus telling us they'd swapped to Michelin for this year, and one of the reasons was, well, there's 2 solid reasons. One is because they partnered up with them for their hypercar program, obviously, and Michelin is building them special tyres and individual tyres for that car because of its unique nature within the Le Mans hypercar class. Remember, potential of 5 or 6 different classes within the LMH category, but also because of the potential for bad weather this year, and they feel that the Michelin tyre is a big advantage if the skies open. Nico Bastian Bruce coming to the end of a lap in his AMG GT3. It's the number 46, which he is piloting to the end of the lap.
Yeah, not yet at the sharp end of the field, that 46 entry. So that's a very good time. When I say not at the sharp end of the field, I mean just going to the sharp end of the field, I feel. It was a geographical comment rather than anything else, but it goes to show that a lot of the teams are biding their time very early on in this session, and now really looking to wind it up. The track is dry, but we did see 5-10 minutes ago, a little bit of rain falling on the screen. We're riding with Romain Dumas, but right now up into 10th place for Nico Bastian, then I believe, and just waiting for confirmation. Timing screen to change. No, sorry, I mean first place. What am I talking about? 8 minutes. He's half a second to the good over Falcon Motorsports, number 44 Porsche. So it's Mercedes, Porsche, a couple of BMWs. Best of the Audis at the moment. Phoenix Racing, car number 11, down in 7th place.
Other classes, it does count for something here in these early stages. So obviously we know SP9 is that Team HRT AMG number 6. It is the Glickenhaus that is ahead of the Space Drive AMG in SPX, 10th position for the number 704. It is Black Falcon with their Porsche, actually just coming into the pits, the number 350. That's Black Falcon Team ADAC Racing Porsche GT3 Cup. That's SP4. They're in 22nd. 26th, the Cup X leader is the KTM Crossbow. Now, that just disappeared. That's a 115 car. In SP7, it's the number 58 Porsche. That from memory, that's the Peter Bonk and Bill Cameron car in that category. Slightly smaller field than I was hoping to see in SP7. SP8T in the pits, Black Falcon, AMG GT4, the 36 car. TCR, Bonk Motorsports, Cupra Leon competition. Thomas Partle had set the time there in the 171 before pitting. It is 34 in 32nd position for Schnitzelam for the GT4 category, which is termed SP10 here. That was the car I think we saw facing the wrong direction earlier on. We've got the Mühlner Motorsport Porsche 718 Cayman leading Cup 3 in 39, so that's the 309. Max Kreuzer Racing for VW Golf GTI in the SP3T category. That is a TCR car, but running outside of the TCR category. There's a difference in tyre regulations between SP3T and TCR from memory, but I know Peter has been reading up on that, but I'm doing that from old memory, so I apologise if I'm wrong, but that's the leader in SP3T. 42nd overall, 45th overall is the Cup 5 Adrenaline Motorsport BMW M2 Club Sport. That's the Adrenaline Motorsport team, always very good around here. That's the number 240. 420 is the Ford Motors Bio Concept Porsche Cayman. That is leading the alternative fuels category with the Mustang in that as well. 46th overall, 59th overall is Team Mathol Racing, the 168 Porsche Cayman S. Porsche 718 GTS is the number 718 in SP4T, 61st position for them. Adrenaline Motorsports, second class leader for them in V6 for a Cayman S981, the same shape as Eve's Boxster there, so not the very latest car, still a 6-cylinder car that I guess as well. The 131, it's in 65th position. Novell Racing with Toyo tyres, Lexus RCF leads the 2-car category in SP8, 67th position for the number 54 car. 69th, the V2T leader, another Adrenaline Motorsport BMW, this time 330 G20. 81st is the SP3 leader, that's the Royal Auto Motor Club. Toyota GT86, that's that 4-car category that includes the Toyota Altis, the Dacia and the Manta Foxtail. SP2T is a Hyundai, that is the i20N, 165 car, and they're in 89th position. V5 is the Adrenaline Motorsport team. What's that, 4 now? That's another Porsche Cayman, different state of tune there for the 141 in 98th position. Still inside the top 100 for the BMW 240i class. I think it's called Cup 5. It's the Aviazorg Rennsport, another stalwart team of racing around here. And that their 240i then is in fact, it's just dropped to 100th position. The 325E90 Classic in SP4 is leading for the 325 team. And the Hoffer Racing in that spinning BMW we saw earlier on, the M3 CSL, is leading, and in fact, it's just gone out the pits in SP6 in 114th position. And that is your 20-odd class leaders. When we do the updates, we'll split them between classes and do, in the race, about half of that on the odd hours and half on the even. Otherwise, it would take us an hour to get through them before we get back again to racing. So what have we got left then? Just under 10 minutes, Bruce, in what it would seem, from our vantage point in the booth at least, has been a fairly straightforward run once the circuit dried up.
Absolutely, John. Now we're getting down to those representative times. 8 minutes, 26.8 seconds. That's the fastest time. It's a Mercedes, the number 4 Mercedes, one of two entered by Team HRT, Hubert Hout's team. And at the moment, it's Manuel Metzger, former winner of this race, out front by just half a second. And the Mercedes in second place now, and it's the sister car. So, like Rover Racing with their BMW, the Hout Racing team waited in this 1.5-hour session to put their times in at the end, hoping that the little flurry of rain that started 5-10 minutes before the cars went out on the track, that would dissipate, the track would dry, and now we're seeing some very competitive times. Top 4 cars covered by 2 seconds. It's 2 Mercedes, a Porsche and a BMW, but barring a couple of spins and the problem for the 81 BMW that had to be towed back in, and just about 5 minutes ago we saw the Fly and Help 80 class, the alternative technology class Dodge Viper, limping around, front left tyre completely flat. Dirk Rieben-Sam at the wheel. It's been a very standard session, which is exactly what the doctor ordered here.
Yeah, agreed. A couple of tweets coming in at RSL Studio, hashtag RSLN24. Jack Martin, great to have the Nürburgring 24 back. Been waiting for this race for weeks. Seemingly, I'd forgotten how annoying the pit lane siren was. Yes, but it's really important if you're working in the pit lane. Hello to Michael Rennick. Hello, Michael. Enjoying some qualifying before work in Atlanta. It has been a very pleasant day here, Michael. Not sure what the weather's like with you there, living up to its Hotlanta nomenclature, perhaps at this time of the year, starting to get a bit steamy. Good to know you're listening, Michael. All the best, mate. Jesse Young, how do you rate the chances of the number 63 Triple F Lamborghini being a winning car without Caldarelli? It's a good point, that. Lamborghini, again, it's one of those cars that has been towards the sharp end before in some of the races, Peter, but Caldarelli not in the driver's lineup here.
No, he's not, and it's interesting that, you know, it's always good to have drivers in the car that have had experience in the NLS. Of course, we were shortchanged one, of course, with the snow, unfortunately, but you know, those who, especially in the qualifying race, the 6-hour qualifying race, vital to have drivers who've had a bit of experience of that, and it goes in dry conditions too. As we see the Haupt Racing team, the very distinctly painted number 6 Haupt Racing Team Mercedes, going to the top of the pack with the is it a tiger or a cat that's on the front bonnet?
Amounts to the same thing, doesn't it, really, to be honest. Hello to those of you listening on RS1. If you're travelling around, maybe driving, don't want to be distracted by the video feed, very smart. Or if you're bandwidth challenged and you're moving around, Jim Casey listening in to us and thoroughly enjoying what's going on at the moment. 8:23.526 for Nico Bastian's last time. I still think, Bruce, if we stay fine for the single shot showdown, we're going to knock the sharp end of 10 seconds off that, maybe a bit more, aren't we?
Well, if we have a circuit that's uniformly dry, because despite, if you're riding on board, as we are with Alessio Picariello, there's still drops of rain falling at the back of the circuit around Exmüller, Bergwerk. So it's in the driver's mind. The track is almost dry for 80% of the circuit. It's that other 20% at the moment that's holding those times back. And again, the other little Bird tweeting on their shoulder, do not drop the car in the barriers on a Thursday morning. We've got another hour and a half of qualifying this evening, and 3 hours of qualifying this evening. So it's really all about then. It's about building towards the greater picture. But again, I want to be fastest. It's a driver's sort of métier, isn't it, to try and put their name at the top of the chart. So Nico Bastian has the bragging rights by 3.2 seconds. Adam Christodoulou's just taken over the car at the second fastest. Let's see what he can do. But it'll be just this one flying lap for him.
Yes, good point. With only 5 minutes to go. Again, there's the recalibration. Picariello heading up the hill to the base of the hill that leads to the Caracciola Carousel. Very careful not to hit any of the curbs going up that area of the circuit. Now turning right and heading up the hill, point at the big tree in the end of the advertising hoarding. That gives you the right line there. Lance David Arnold coming to the end of a lap for Porsche and for Falcon Motorsports. 33 and 22, those two cars. Daniel Kalvitz in the 22. 33 and 44, those cars. Daniel Kalvitz is in the 22, but that is the Ferrari, the Wackenspiegel car. So here's Lance David Arnold coming to the end of the lap, in and out of the sunshine, as the clouds are still stubbornly refusing to be blown away to the line for LDA. A little bit of a drag behind the GT tyres. GT4 comes through in an 8:35.7. That's 12 seconds off the lead, and that puts him where? Down in 17th position.
The sister car is in third, as I say that, yes, stays in third. The screen flickered. That's Alessio Picariello. We rode on board with him, riding on board with him now. He's got a time that's 4 seconds down on the ultimate pace, but good for, fourth now. Sorry, it's changing fast, as it should, John.
Last man across the line gets the fastest time. I think they're certainly, Peter, aren't they, going to have the best conditions here at the end as we're coming to the end of this 90-minute session. A reminder that anybody that goes across the line will, as in any other quote-unquote normal motor racing session, be able to complete that lap. So, in theory, a checkered flag at 2 o'clock here at the Nürburgring could mean us still waiting for cars and getting on for 8-9 minutes past, Peter.
Exactly, yeah. I think this is, I seem to remember, it's Nico Hülkenberg's first F1 pole position at Interlagos back in 2010 when he drove for Williams. And now, not to take anything away from Le Mans winner Nico, but he was the last man over the line, and it was just one of those very quickly drying circuits. And it's hard to imagine that, 80 minutes ago, there was huge amounts of standing water around Kellenhard and Bergwerk and over those parts of the circuit, which not really bits where you want standing water, but it's absolutely fascinating. Watch all the top class guys in the SP9 really winding the wick up, and you kind of feel like they've been a coiled spring over the last few weeks, because for the drivers to come and race in these cars at the Nürburgring, I doubt they've got much sleep over the last few days, and you can tell the drivers are really up for it this afternoon.
Didn't you like, Peter, the fact that, somebody of the calibre of Klaus Bachler, as Picariello comes to the end of his lap? We'll keep an eye on that time. Good enough for 5th at the moment in the Falcon number 44 Porsche. But didn't you like that Klaus Bachler, when I asked him the question, said, yeah, absolutely, it still does excite me. No improvement for Picariello in terms of his position, at least. It does still excite him, despite the fact that he races GT3 all over the world, because there's nothing like the Nürburgring. And I think drivers like to know they're making a difference, Peter. And you could hear the excitement in his voice when he answered that question.
Oh, I think for any driver, it's anybody you speak to, they all talk about the Nürburgring Nordschleife. It's just the absolute ultimate challenge. And coming back to Timo Bernhard's run in the 9:19 Evo, of course, when he set that lap time, Timo is one of the absolute all-time greats of the Nürburgring. But he told me a story when he first drove the Nordschleife. It was in a Porsche 911, a 996 generation GT2. And he was sent out by Roland Kussmaul to go and do some practice laps. And he got halfway around his first practice lap and actually pulled over because he was so scared and phoned Roland Koosmal and said, okay, where have you crashed? He goes, no, I haven't crashed. I'm just terrified. He says, well, actually, Thibaut, this is good because now you have a respect that you never lose for the circuit. Yeah. And that's another factor is the drivers, even the very best guys, they know exactly what they're up against. They do not come in here with their eyes half open. No, they know what they're taking on.
You can't, and you can never take it for granted. Little problem for Patrick Kolb in the line speed by Car Collection Motorsport. That's an Audi R8 in the Pro-Am category of SP9, GT3, if you will, sharing with Milan Donci, Patrick Niederhauser, and Lorenzo Rocco di Torre Padula. He'll just be Lorenzo RDT, I think, Bruce, don't you?
No, I just enjoy saying that name. It buys you a bit of time as you start at the front of it and work your way to the end. But a couple of changes. We just had Robin Freitz going up into second place. So remember at the start of the session, it was Audi setting the pace, and then they fell to the bottom end of the top 10, went up into second place. Now Dennis Olsen has gone second fastest in the 31 Frichidelli Porsche. But the clock has reached the end. The drivers haven't reached the end of this session. They've got to complete their flying laps. But it's the number 6 HRT Mercedes first at the moment. Frichidelli Racing number 31 Porsche second, and Robin Freitz, remember that, third fastest, the number 15 Audi. And as I say that, BMW M6 car 101, Christian Cronjes, former winner of the Spa 24 Hours, he slots his walk-on-horse motorsport M6 into third place. Keeps on changing. Any further changes coming? Yes, we've got some pink times on the screen. There could be changes. A late improvement too from Alexander Imperatori. KCMG, just the one entry this year. Nowhere. They were one of the late teams out onto the circuit. Imperatori, the Swiss racer, up into fifth.
Yeah, just their third year here at this marvellous event. And the Frichidelli 31, I wondered if they were going to go back out onto the Nordschleife. The answer is no. So that car is in the pit lane. I suspect that's because we've got yellow flags and slow zones. There's been an incident at the top of the Foxhole and Adenauer Forest, and can't tell you who that is for at the moment, but I don't think that was the car I was talking about earlier on, the Patrick Kolb line speed car. I thought that was at the bottom of the run to the Caracciolo carousel with that car off on the left by the old test hill, which goes straight on now with a ridiculous gradient. As the track sweeps off to the right hand side. Here's Lars Kern, fastest man in a production car around the Nürburgring Nordschleife for Porsche. Also a very handy racing driver, both here, where he is a bit of a specialist, and in other places. Lars plays that down massively, but you should never discount Lars Kern. Quiet man, very experienced driver, particularly around here. As I said, there's a lot of the Porsche testing being out in the new 992 GT3s and the new GT3 Touring. There's a new Sport Classic coming as well in the 992 body shape. If the spy shots that I've been looking at is anything to go by, can't get my contacts at Porsche to confirm or deny that. So still the code 60 at Adenauer Forest, so that is probably why anybody who was thinking of going back out, having crossed the line with a few seconds to go, have peeled back in to the pits. Philip Eng spoke to us last night on Midweek Motorsports. He was on his way back out of the track, driving back to his digs, coming down, sitting in 17th at the moment, 11 seconds off the pace. But again, what we've got to keep saying here, Bruce, is 11 seconds is absolutely nothing around here.
Yes, and he got caught by not just those code 60 zones. In fact, he might have just been clear, but he had a lot of traffic earlier in this lap. So he knows this isn't going to be a super fast lap. 17th fastest at the moment. He may pick up a few places, but this session is over now. And look, there's blue sky, John.
Of course there is.
Very hard indeed.
Bit of sunshine. See some very short, because the sun is still very high at just after 2 o'clock here at the Nürburgring. Short shadows as Eng comes through, and he will peel back off into the pit lane, having done the run round the Grand Prix circuit. Looking down to see if there's anybody else on a quick lap. And 17th, stays in 17th position. About a second or so away from the best time for that car, the defending champion car, the Rover Racing BMW. I can't see anybody out there, Peter, at the moment who's going to challenge that 8:23.5 from Nico Bastian in the AMG Team HRT Mercedes, the number 6 car.
No, there's a lot of red coming up on our timing screen at the moment, which means the top SP9 cars coming into pit lane now. Of course, we've got a slow zone and code 60 at the Vauxhall and Adenauer force. So have we had any? Do you guys have any information about if there's a car off or what have you? It would need to be. I would imagine it's a car had an incident at that particular point in the circuit.
I have to say, I have not fired up the ticker, which I will do for the next session.
All it's saying, John, is there was a slow zone, a new code 60 zone at Adenauer Force. They cleared it, and then almost immediately they reinstigated it. Just worth pointing out, we talked fleetingly about the Lamborghinis and about not having Andrea Caldarelli in demand worldwide, not here this weekend. And that number 63 Lamborghini was in 8th place. It's now in 9th because the fellow Lamborghini, but from the Conrad Motorsport team, suddenly Michele Di Martino, Italian by name, German by nationality, has gone into 7th place. So Conrad Motorsport kept it quiet. Good job from them. So we've got at the moment, just listen to these manufacturers, Mercedes first, Porsche second, Audi third, BMW fourth, and then the next of the manufacturers is down in 7th, which is Lamborghini, which is as good as it can get. I would suggest to have that mixture, 5 marks in the top 7 places. So they've got the balancing right.
Picariello coming to the end of his lap. We see the checkered flag. I've now checked the ticker. It was the Hoffa Racing number 81, the BMW M3 CSL, that was causing the issue at Adenauer Force, the code 60. Quick hello to Victor Ellis from the leafy green streets of Virginia Highland in Atlanta. 21 degrees, 81% humidity. Wow. I bet that made the morning running a bit challenging, Victor. Also, hello to Rob Chalmers listening on RS1 on his lunch break. Overcast and muggy Cheshire. And who else did I see? Corey Marvin tuning in for some qualifying from Belleville, Ontario, Canada. Raining there at the moment and enjoying the variety of different manufacturers. Well, for most, I would say a relatively trouble-free run. I'm looking down. I reckon we've seen certainly over 120 cars post a time, Bruce. If not every single car, but...
we had 125 cars on the entry list. 122 names on entries on the board in that qualifying session, 3 of which did not complete a flying lap.
No, but they went out round the Grand Prix Strecker, didn't they? Yeah, good point. Including the Opel Astra Cup car, the number 90, the 105, BMW 325 A90, and also the Dacia, the 118, that only went round the Grand Prix circuit, hasn't ventured out yet. Great to see, by the way, that both of the Fricadelli cars this weekend has Sabine Schmidt's name on the car. The team with which she is inextricably linked, although, of course, taking her overall victories for BMW, and indeed one of Sabine's BMW overall winning cars will be doing a demo lap along with the Glickenhaus LMH just as we come on air on Saturday, 3 o'clock local, 2 o'clock in the UK. So thankfully, and I mean this honestly, a fairly uneventful first hour and a half that sees, as Bruce mentioned, a wonderful array and variety of manufacturers at the top. Mercedes from Porsche, from Audi from BMW, from Audi from Porsche, from Lamborghini, from Mercedes, from Lamborghini, and then a couple of more Porsches just outside the top 10. The best of Ferraris in 12th, the best of BMWs we've mentioned in 4th position. Lamborghini's up there. Yeah, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? As far as the variety is concerned. And now just time for the guys to grab a late lunch, do a debrief and sort themselves back out before we're back later on for a wee bit longer session. It is qualifying 2 coming up at 20 minutes past 8 Central European time. That's 20 minutes past 7. Before that on RS1, slightly earlier than usual on a Thursday, Krilsey, Shebex and the rest of the team on the grid. Weekly magazine programme from Down Under. Lee Diffie, the special guest there, talking about the Indy 500 and his elevation to track and field commentator for NBC. And then following us at 11:45 Central European time, 10:45 in the UK, or thereabouts, we'll have our virtual racing show, the Simcast. That's all this evening on RS1 and in sound and vision, of course, via radio-show.co.uk. So just confirming, we believe that we've seen all bar a couple or possibly 3 cars at least out on the Grand Prix circuit today, even though the bottom 3 listed on the timing screen only did those laps around there. Thank you very much to Peter and to Bruce. We're going for a lie down in a darkened room and a rub down with some warm halibut oil. Top 3 then. Audi, Christopher Haase putting in the time for the number 3 Audi R8 LMS. And Frickadelli in second position with their 31 car. Dennis Olsen making the time work for him in that red and white machine. And top of the shop, another manufacturer for Nico Bastian and the AMG GT3 Mercedes-Benz. Thanks for being with us. Join us again later on. 8:20 local time in Central Europe. That's 7:20 in the UK. If you're not sure where that is, where you are in the world, go to radio-show.co.uk, scroll down to the bottom, and you will see an on-air schedule for RS1. The video feed is the same times, and that auto converts into your time zone. Right, off for a currywurst, I think now. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.